Hello and welcome to yet another episode of PonderCast. Today we have a special guest, so we would be talking about a lot of things about journalism to philosophy. She's essentially a founder of Heal Your Soul. She was also a journalist and writer. We have Hifza Shah Jilani. Hifza, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here, and I'm really looking forward to this podcast.
Maybe we can start with the initial basic questions like what was your childhood like, and the schooling that you did, and how did you end up in journalism, for example?
That's an interesting question, and it's always, enlightening to go back in time and understand why are we doing what we are doing, right? So, I mean, initially as a child, I would always be very inclined towards understanding, the bigger picture in life. As a child, I would not so much get inclined towards playing or being with other kids. I would rather be outside and playing with insects and like looking at the moon and the butterflies and things like that. I know, very atypical, but I mean, as a child, I was very shy and introverted. And growing up, since I was the middle child, I had to, sort of like make my presence known. And I would be very hyper and attention seeking child, but I never got any. So I guess my in my own simplistic and naive way, I wanted to seek the approval of my parents by excelling at school. I mean, the story of every Desi household, right? Excelling at school and trying to, make myself the unique and the more thoughtful child. So I did that, and moving on, of course, since I my whole family is from that typical pro politics and pro establishment sort of family. They are very traditional in a sense that they would always believe in going the easy route, which is to, stand up for your people and do what is doable and find that respect in the society. So I thought that, I would also fit the same mold, and I would also do that. I would stand up for my people, and I would, maybe like join politics or, things like that. So I went to liberal arts school, and I thought that social sciences, economics, and philosophy, and psychology and sociology would be the right way to go and finish my CSS. But at the end of the day, when I started, at the time of my thesis submission, I kind of like at the same time I dropped my CV at Express Tribune. It was a newly founded organization at the time, and I immediately got in. It was 2013 elections, and I was only 21. So I think the spur of the entire journey, or the excitement and the acceleration, I was so hooked. I was always a reader. I was always a good writer. So I felt like, okay, this is me, But then down the line, I was like, okay, why should I do CSS? Because I just enjoy this. And by that time, I had figured out that being a CSS officer, you have to sit in the office and you have to listen to orders. And, like as a child who was always rebellious, I just felt like that's not me. And throughout my journalistic years, of course, I enjoyed a lot. I explored a lot of potential there in myself, but I felt like it's not me also. So in short, yeah, it was a roller coaster ride.
Sounds amazing, and I think this is a great intro. So yeah, you touched a lot of things. So maybe I think I can dissect this into multiple sections. First one, I think
Sure.
you alluded to, or you talked about the family. The family is related to politics, and how basically they always go towards certain type of structures. Uh,
Yes,
so
yes. And I think everyone
so
can relate to it. Like doctor's family, you have to be a doctor. Engineer
Mhm.
family, you have to be an engineer. So it's like, you cannot like stand out from the crowd, right? And that's
Mhm.
what we all struggle with. I think all of the youngsters, they struggle with the fact that, okay, how do I establish myself as a unique individual?
Mhm.
And in that process, we kind of lose ourselves and also make ourselves. So it's either or. So it's kind of challenging and it's kind of interesting.
Sounds fascinating. So yeah, I think for the audience, I know that, but for the audience, who is the family member in the politics?
Okay, you know that. That's amazing. So, actually, like my father has been the mayor of Khairpur for a long time, and he has been into politics since like 1988. He was like one of those people who would stand up with Benazir Bhutto and like things like that. So I grew up on those stories, and then my father's uncle, who like Chacha Taya, is Kaimali Shah, and he was chief minister like a few times. So I think growing up in that sort of household sort of like inspires you to be like a little bit, you want to exceed, in every way. You feel like you're in a competition, even though there isn't, but it's in your mind, right? Certain kid is going to Georgetown, and certain kid is learning law, certain kid is going to Ziauddin, and like it's like all different kids trying to make their mark in whatever industry they're going into. Mostly it was all from the doctors industry also, because most of my aunties went into that. But still, like, it was a big shoe to fill for everyone. And I think I don't like to talk so much about it, and I feel like it is a big reason why I kind of like moved into my journey. Of course, I mean, it was not a typical household in terms of like, how women are expected to, kind of marry and bear children. In my family, it was always like women have to do better. One of my aunts went to Oxford, and she was an anthropologist, which also I chose later on. She joined politics at a much younger age. So of course there were those examples, and it's not because there was this inner desire to compete them, but of course you wanted to, like kind of like be accepted. And that, that void of acceptance sort of like made you excel or made you want to do things at a very young age. So I did not realize that I was just pushing myself, pushing myself, pushing myself, and focusing on the big purpose. So in this journey, and when we're going to talk about my wellness journey and how I entered this phase of my life, I would talk more in detail at that time. But just to give you a gist that this outer external validation and this seeking of approval, this wanting to be accepted, wanted to be seen, is something that kind of like pushes you further and further and further away from your own well-being, because that is not wellness. That is just external validation and looking out because you're not looking in. So that's exactly what was happening to me. And one day I just woke up. I was like, okay, this is a lie. This is illusion. So
I
yeah.
I might get triggered by the talk at the end of the podcast, maybe because of, it is resonating with a lot of my own journey as well. But I think two of the questions. One regarding that you mentioned that you are basically an introvert, and how journalism is essentially a extroverted field. So from that
Yes.
lens, what were the problems that you faced during the journalism phase, and how did you transition towards, you decided that you need to move on to other things?
See, my introverted to extroverted journey, even till now, I'm a deep introvert at heart. But when I'm talking in front of people, there's a spark in my eyes, and I go like, da, 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 da. So nobody can think that I am like an introverted person at heart.
Yeah.
But throughout my teenage years, per
Mhm.
se, because as I said, I was everything kind of like stems from the childhood, right? So because I was the middle child, I always felt like, okay, I need to be more talkative or animated when I talk, because most of my other sisters were very talkative since their childhood. So I was like, okay, I have to, So, but then this thought came in later on, and it's like around like maybe 16, 17 or 18, you can say, when I started university. Even at that time, I wasn't a social butterfly, but I was popular because I was a school nerd. But I was kind of like
Mhm.
very, like expressive in the way of how I am, because I had a lot of opinions, and
Mhm.
I believed in the world being a peaceful place, and things like that. So yes, so in journalism, when I came in, at that time, of course, you have to be extroverted, but
Mhm.
even initially, it was very hard for me to kind of like grasp this sort of world. And especially when you are in reporting, things
Mhm.
completely change. So when you're
Mhm.
on the desk and you're editing, and that's what I was doing, right, initially in the start of my career, it was much easier. You just have to go to the reporter and ask questions, and maybe like reword it and use your English and blah blah. So that is pretty easy. You don't have
Mhm.
to talk to anyone. You're busy on your desk.
Mhm.
But because I wanted to go out and explore,
Mhm.
I don't know, there was this somehow, whenever I went into the field, and whenever I would be with people, the psychologist or the
Mhm.
inner coach in me kind of like arose out of nowhere. I had no clue, but whenever I would be sitting with people, there would be this deep sense of connection. And that deep sense of connection sort of like pushed me out of
Mhm.
my shell, and I became who I am. I stopped giving, any regard to what others might think. I just, like held a safe space for the other person so that they can tell me their story and I can write about it with their consent. So,
Makes
I mean, I think you understand the,
makes
uh,
absolute sense. Yeah, I think that
yeah.
makes sense. But I asked the question regarding from the standpoint of rebellion, I think you mentioned regarding the rebellion and speaking truth to the power, but there is basically some semblance of survival in that case within
Yes.
journalism. So,
Oh,
were
okay. Specifically
did you have
journalism.
any kind?
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Did you have any
Yeah.
problems from
See,
that standpoint, or
of
the
course.
transition
I
was
mean,
something else?
yes, yes, it was problematic. It was deeply problematic. So when I was in like the print side of journalism, it was like I'm gonna speak my heart out. I don't care who is gonna sue me after this. But this is what happens when you don't care about other things, external things. So when I was on the print side, things were like fairly okay, because at that time, like you're in between intellectuals and everybody's talking about power and authority and governments and this and that. So it was like a big eye-opening journey for me. But at the same time, there were some things that kind of like put me on the back seat, and I was like, okay, why is this happening? And this time, on one end, you're saying that you're completely neutral, but I'm seeing different calls from different political organizations, and you
Mm,
are kind of like, I mean, there were literally requests coming from top to for me to do a certain story in some water plant, and I would be like, why? Why am I being chosen to do certain stories? And there were instances also in my print journalistic field where I felt sort of like, because I'm a girl, I felt like, okay, I'm being shut off. There were situations where I was harassed, not typically harassment, but things like, okay, mirchi lag rahi ho, things like that, and I would be like, okay, senior editors are gonna talk to me like that. So yes, I did not expect that coming in. And then on top of that, when I did like a story on a particular establishing organization, I wouldn't name it because I don't think that that would air. So it's not such a big deal, but then I got a call that, okay, you are kind of like stepping in. It was like a certain story about like kolachi restaurants and things like that. So I had a
mm,
column and I was like, is it strictly business? So people started, like, I got a call from an official and they questioned me, okay, you're not supposed to treat on these waters and this and this. So of course that rebellious side in me kind of like, like what the hell is going on? So
yeah,
yes, and then if you talk
mm,
about the video journalism, when you talk about me being part of shows, there's like a lot there. But in terms of like, okay, what kind of like control and autonomous restrictions that I had at the time was from probably the producers giving like hints in your ear, and they're like, don't ask
mm,
about this certain province, and you're
yeah.
like, why can't I ask about a province? This is what I've studied. How can I not say all this? No, 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 don't talk about this. That guest is getting triggered. You're like, like I have to take care of the guest's needs. So it's a very complicated situation in Pakistan. The journalists, I mean, of course, there are certain journalists that I look up to this day.
Mm,
They are doing a good job, but I don't think anybody is autonomous and anybody has the complete authority over what they do. And that goes for every single field in Pakistan. I feel like that's what we've become. We just want to control the other person and tell them, okay, I own you and you have to like abide by the rules that I have given. So I'm a rule breaker from childhood, and I'm not going to follow these rules. And that's what
And
kind of like,
and is it only in
yes,
Pakistan? Yeah, is it also basically because we also follow global, outlets. For example, New York Times we talk about, and they also have some kind of partiality. Same goes for the other, global players. So do you think that,
of course,
from the standpoint of state enterprises that we have within Pakistan, the journalism
yeah.
that they are running, is it more of that control, or is it basically some kind of exogenous control as well?
See, when you talk about exogenous influences, I was chosen to be the Future Women Leader by IVLP. It is a prestigious US State Department program, International Visitor Leadership Program. And a lot of big people have gone in that program. And when I went there, and I still remember I'm sitting in foreign policy state office in Washington D.C. And there's other girls with me, and I have very good stories about Pakistan and being a woman and all that, right? Because
Mm,
I have gone above and beyond those standards. So I see other women, like, I'm not gonna like kind of like look down on that, but there were some sob stories. And I look at this certain official, and I was very impressed by her. She had like a high ponytail, and she was sitting there with her really nice watch, and she's just looking at the girls talking about their stories, and she started crying. She was like some gender expert. And I'm looking at that and I'm like, what is there to cry about? I'm so sorry, but at that time I was like, okay, so everybody's playing a game and an agenda. So when I got out from the program and I spoke to a lot of people and I was like, wow, they treated us like queens. We had like specific stipends. We were treated like, Malalas of those times. And like we were given such importance. And I went around and spoke to a lot of people and they're like, well, you're kind of like saying things that they want you to say. So they will not control you. But if you were, let's say, kind of like not saying the things that they want to say, then of course, there would be those things going around. And when I went to Afghanistan, also, one time I went for a MUN, United Nations mock organization with some kids. And then the second time I went for my TV show, there were some interesting things that happened, even on this side of the border and on that side of the border. But at the end of the day,
Afghanistan is not
somehow
a Afghanistan is not a good example, I think. It's own kind
But
of a
I'm just saying,
quagmire.
like, even if you go to Afghanistan, there would be certain people controlling you. It's crazy. Like,
Yeah,
as a woman, there are going to be people coming up to you, please don't talk to a Moroccan. And you're like, I'm just having a tea with a Moroccan. Things like that. No, no, you are like our own. And you're like, I'm not your family member. Why are you controlling me? So I'm just talking about in terms of like how we're supposed to behave in certain situations. I don't know if I answered your question because your question is really about like international organizations. But yes, when I worked for New York Times, they would always look for a
to
more
speak
than
in a
human interest angle.
mm,
Yeah,
makes sense. Makes
they
sense.
would always look for something.
Yeah, yeah. So that I think that this was my question basically. So you're saying that everybody's playing the agenda. You need to speak in certain ways to be selected on a certain forum. So I think it's a scale of things perhaps in the case of Pakistan, but I think it's more or less or by and large the same in other parts of the world
Yes,
as well.
correct. I believe so. Maybe, maybe. But I think in Pakistan, it's also very deeply engraved in our culture.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not just the state actors or like government entities, it's also the people that kind of like try to influence you and sabotage how you are behaving and acting.
Mhm.
So it's how it is. This is how society is. I accepted
Curated.
that.
Okay, makes sense. So I think the next question would be regarding does it take a mental toll because these are a lot of pressures. Some of the unbeknownst pressures are also there. So does it take a lot of mental toll while working in journalism, or is it basically
Of
just
course.
that's
I mean, see, when you're in that adrenaline rush and when you're like doing that story or the scoop, when you have, you sort of feel the thrill, or when you're published in New York Times, you feel like the champion of the industry, of course. But because I was, as I said, very hypersensitive and I did not realize it or did not like accept it completely, I was left in that territory where I would be like, okay, why is this happening to me? That question kind of like keep arising every time. Why am
Mhm.
I, like feeling this? Why are other people so okay? Why am I crying about this? Why do I feel like, okay, this person is judging me? Or why do I feel like this person is misunderstanding me? So it all came, very small things started hurting me a lot very quickly. And I'm not blaming the system or I'm not blaming the external world for it. Of course, a lot of it is what I did and what kind of, when we are going to step into the wellness world, I'm going to talk about this as well, that a lot of your reality is actually created by your own persona and your own mind. So whatever I want, whatever I'm getting triggered by, will keep repeating in different situations, in different times, in different dynamics.
Mhm.
So I'm not saying that I'm blaming myself, but yes, a certain part of it is because that was what I signed up for, and that was what
Mhm.
I sort of like created from my own mind. I don't know if that makes sense, but we'll talk about it later on for sure.
Yeah, I think it does make sense, and I would be going towards the personas and the personalities as well. I do have a question regarding that.
Yes.
So I think let's pivot towards how did you found the organization? For example, I think since we talked about the journalism, I think it's a 180-degree shift for me as a person, and for most of the people, they can't do that kind of a shift. So I think if you can talk about how did you make that happen?
Yes, yes. I know a lot of people still ask me the question, and I still don't feel if I have given them the right, answers or right sort of like feedback or right like, response. Because
Mhm.
sometimes even I feel like, okay, is it a dream? Like I just woke up one day and everything changed around me. I am going to like cut it short and try to like give the gist of my journey in simplest ways. But yes, if I'm trying to like put a timeline to it, it all
Mhm.
started like around the time when I started asking questions. And I was like, why am I not happy? That question kept arising in me, that I am
Mhm.
not happy with other people praising me. Why am I not happy with having the things that I wanted? Why have I lost this, that we're talking about this spark? Why have I lost that spark to do something for my people? Why have I stopped looking up to my goals? And it was so daunting at the time, and I didn't realize that it's taking such a, it's such a weight on me that I have started questioning my existence. I've started questioning my purpose. I've started questioning my life. I've started questioning my relationships. Like, everything went into like complete chaos.
Mhm.
And I was like, what's going on? And out from the outside, living the perfect life. Nobody could tell. That's how, when we are in the rush or the adrenaline of our passions and desires. And I'm not nothing against that. Our passions and desires are what we came here to do, right? Quote unquote. Not me. I'm not saying that, but that's what I believe. That's what all we are, believing. That's what we're told. Poets, philosophers, everyone tells you there's a passion in you. Go for it. Blah blah blah. And then suddenly you are, like receiving the
Mhm.
attention and the achievements and milestones. But then you're like, did I sign up for this or did I not? And that sort of question kind of like stuck to me. And I think it comes to every person's mind. And I'm not saying that I was the better person or I was the more, courageous person to get out of it. No, a lot of people cannot. As you said, there are some people that are stuck in the loop of, like, it's like things are happening to work for them. They cannot do
Mhm.
anything about it. But I think it all happened very slowly. And I think my mother's passing away, that was like the moment of waking up. Because that's when I realized, okay,
Mhm.
well, she's not here. A lot of things, like, I got out of my bubble because it started, like, it was like I cannot even put it on words. Because at the time I was like, okay, like, I don't know what to say about that, but I think that was the time when I was like, okay, enough is enough, and I
Mhm.
don't have to live a lie anymore. I cannot be the person that I'm not.
Mhm.
And because you don't
Mhm.
realize you're living a lie, right? Yes.
So I think I think it's a perfectly right answer because I think it's a turning point in one's life when once you don't have a guarding agent, angel or a supporting person.
Yes.
My question would be, how would you advise a person? I think let's first talk about heal your soul and what it does. So basically, I think just a holistic overview of what you do. I think that would be the good question before I transition to a
Yes.
deeper thing.
Yes. So basically, Heal Your Soul is a wellness center and a training center. There
Mhm.
are other centers here in UAE, but excuse me, when I started working here, it's a lot of commercialization here, of course, because it's a field. I mean, you know about how in Pakistan we have like certain people that you go to for answers, right?
Mhm.
And those people are not well reputed, and a lot of people talk about, like, scams and people misleading others and cheating others. Here you cannot do that. You are bound by the legislature, you're bound by your therapy practices. And of course, like with psychotherapy and the traditional models of wellness, our sort of like brand of wellness is slightly different,
Mhm.
because we don't just work on another person's emotions and their release of emotions. We also work on kind of like releasing the roadblocks or the problems that have sort of like created the life of that person. So for example, a
Mhm.
person is stuck in the mindset of poverty, for example, and
Mhm.
that person has gone to therapy, that person has done everything, but it's just not working out, no matter whatever business they invest in. And that's a very common problem, by the way. It's
Yeah.
one of the most commonest problems in every other person. Even if they're rich, they will
Mhm.
have poverty issues, because these when I go further, I can talk more about the chakras and how all our energetic systems are kind of like aligned with our life. But to kind of like simplify what I was gonna say, is
Mhm.
that when you have such a problem in your life and you
Mhm.
feel like there's no way out, you come
Mhm.
to us and we sort of like deconstruct the problem. We sort of like figure out, not we, I mean not I, it's basically we, both of the, I mean the client and you, where you kind of like find out exactly why this person is born, quote unquote, with the curse, of
Mhm.
poverty. So it could also be something so simple as that person believing that they are always going to be poor. And it could just be a belief system. But it could also stem from a childhood experience. It could also stem from the ancestral experiences. It could stem from anywhere in, like, the sky's the limit, because that's our human mind. It is so complex and
Mhm.
so abstract that you have to like pull the plugs. So I mean that's what I was going to say, that when we work with people, we don't just focus on their mental health. I mean
Mhm.
just mental health, because mental health again is how you feel, right? But
Mhm.
we also focus on the external factors in your life, and we kind of like tie that in together with the mind.
Mhm.
So and Heal Your Soul is kind of like the same organization that kind of like works in that field. But to tell you a little bit from a business perspective, or the economical perspective, there are different organizations that offer this and do this, but they are very commercialized, and that was what I felt. And I wanted to do something a little bit more. I mean, of course I'm going to charge people for sure, but the way of operations or the way of dealing with the clients is going to be completely different. Because I still remember in the organization that I was working at, the focus was about how many sessions the client will book. And I believe that's not the right way. You could heal a client in even one session. So let's say if a client comes to me and they're not booking 15 sessions or 10 sessions, then I would not keep getting new clients. So it was like a little bit like that. And I feel that Heal Your Soul is sort of like not towards that path, because I don't believe in that. So of course, all the therapists that are going to be working with me will kind of like be mentored that okay, you can work as much as you want with the client, but let them decide. Don't give them like a timeline, because there is no timeline to healing. Let the
Yeah.
person decide and take that into themselves. You can always tell them, okay, I mean, we can do this, but it's up to you
Mhm.
how many sessions you book. It's just like a little bit of gist, but if you want to know more, I can always tell you more.
Sounds fascinating. So, just a journal question. So basically, a person comes to you, and in that case, you analyze just the external factors and also the things that need therapy. For example, you
Yeah.
mentioned that I was going through the website. So it's basically the mind, body, and soul connection. So how you define the mind, body, and soul connection in this regard?
Correct. So, like you said, the first half of your question was, I mean, you mentioned something like this, that if a client comes to me, it's always them that
Mhm.
will, I mean, they are going to tell me what the issue is. The client will tell me that, okay, my husband doesn't love me. Or the client will tell me, okay, my relationship at work sucks. Or the client will
Mhm.
tell me that I don't love my mother, or there's a problem situation with my mother. So, whatever they tell me, I will kind of like dissect from there and take it from there. So a person can
Mhm.
come up to me with an allergy, a person can come up to me with a cancer, a person can come up to me with a physical pain. So like you said, mind, body, and spirit connection. It's I mean, you could come up with anything and everything. I mean, it's like I can't even like there is no like definition or kind of like a benchmark as to how
Mhm.
your problem should be. The only thing that is required from the client is that commitment to work on themselves and to believe that there are solutions. If they are at the point where they don't believe in solutions and they've completely lost it, they don't believe in the way out, then I think they should go up to like, psychotherapists or psychiatrists, because they are trained to deal with them. But for us, I need that, personal commitment. I need that dedication to work on yourself. So yes, when a client comes, they will come with a problem and we will kind of like take it from there. Regarding the mind, body, and soul connection. So
Mhm.
we all know by now that mind body is like a term right now. And
Mhm.
um, see, it's very interesting, because sometimes a lot of people will tell you that the mind is the the driver. It is the processor of everything, which is 100% true, of course. But then some people or some kind of like mentors and coaches and gurus will talk about how much body is important, and whatever you do with the body it will ultimately kind of like change things in the mind. And that is 100% true as well, because when you exercise, you release endorphins, and endorphins are, completely connected with the brain and the functions of the brain. And that's why they say people who work out or live an active lifestyle, they will not have depression, because it may not happen very easily with another person, like it does with another person. But then again, then there are some people, or like some more uh, traditionals, or people who believe in the old ways. They would talk about how our soul sort of like decides everything. How even in our cultures they would talk about things like, well, whatever is written will happen, you cannot change it. I
Yeah.
mean, by that, of course, they're giving the power to the other source above you, but they're also talking about how things are not in your control completely, because the spirit is kind of like, it has decided. So,
Mhm.
what if, like, newborn babies, they come into Earth with with the entire plan, and they have decided. The spirit has decided that they will have cancer in this life. That's how they will reach whatever lesson they want to learn. So it is kind of complex in its own ways, because you have the spirit, which is completely different. I mean, it's unknown. People don't know about it, and we have not seen it. So there are obviously there's that question mark there. With the mind, the question mark is that it's like, when you talk about neuroscientists, of course, they're talking about the mind and how much you can control the neural pathways depending on how you deal with emotions and blah, blah, blah. But then you have the body, and the body responds to emotions. So, I mean, let's keep spirits on the side for a moment, because we also want to relate to people who can understand and kind of like grasp this information. So, the mind and the body is basically one sort of like, it's like a coin with two different sides, right? Because they're both mirroring each other. So let's say I um, I am not getting enough sunlight, and I am not getting enough sleep, and I am not working on myself. I'm not happy. I'm not living my life to my fullest. So when I'm doing all this with my body, automatically my mind will not work the same way. Automatically my mind will shut off. Automatically I will go into panic attacks. Automatically I will have anxiety. So one in three people have anxiety. It's something that we all, I think it's like by now it's not even one in three. I think it's mostly two or three. But that's what the statistics are saying right now. So by 2050, analysts and big organizations are saying that if we don't change the way we live, we would have damaged the world to an extent where it cannot be even fixed. So I know it's all copulate. It's like kind of like I've lost the my word,
Not
but
a problem.
apocalypse. It's kind of
Yeah.
apocalyptic. But we have to be positive, and we have to really, at this time in our lives, we must. And that's what wellness is, and that's why we say that mind, body, and spirit is one, is because you cannot just live in your mind, you cannot just live in your body. You have to like keep all three intact and connected, so that you are not on autopilot. A,
Mhm.
because a lot of people, they're on autopilot. They'll wake up, they have a specific time, blah blah blah, and it's
Mhm.
just their world is just being on the go. So when you're connected with the body and the mind body has that sync, you will feel it. Okay, I feel it already, that today I should get out and get sunlight. Or it's like, you are your own boss, and you have the agency of every decision in your life.
Yeah.
So it's like crazy. A lot of researchers have said that people who do yoga, people who do fitness, it is enormous. The studies have really spoken about the mental health changes because of choosing the body. So either you choose one of them, and you will get the benefit for the other. So I hope
Makes
I've
absolute sense.
kind of,
Yeah, I think
yes.
I think it's a fascinating insight. I don't want to interject, to be very honest, but I think just to have the discussion regarding, for example, so you mentioned that a person comes in with these kind of problems, and in that case, you analyze them. But in terms of the remedies, is it basically you advise them what kind of changes that they need to do? These could be the nutritional or dietary changes as well, for example. I'm not sure. But it's a question that, do you recommend all sort of these changes, or just you just focus on certain ones versus the other?
See, it depends. The kind of client that comes, and of course, we have a questionnaire. We take their entire medical history. We take their family history. We want to understand where you're coming from. So, of course, I will talk about your lifestyle. I will talk about how whether you have a healthy lifestyle or not. So all those things will be there, and based on those questions, of course, I will sit there and give you my remark or my feedback. Okay, I want you to sit down with a timer every day, 5 minutes, and just focus on your breath. So things like that, these are like probably totkas or whatever. But walk for 10 minutes barefoot, eat this certain food if somebody's coming to me with IBS and things like that. So it's so crazy that most of the problems that our body has, it's all connected with our mind and our subconscious. So when I take in clients, there are 2 or 3 ways that I go about it. Number one, a person who's looking for a purpose in life or is stuck in that loop of, like I was like a few years ago, right? When I'm like stuck in that push and pull externally and I don't know what I want and I'm just, like being pulled away in every direction. That's the time I choose to go for a route which is astrological, and it's not going to be like, okay, because you were born here and your life is stuck here, not like that, but because that the astrology of that person or the way the planets have been sort of positioned when they were born, it will give me an idea about how different aspects of their lives kind of like are currently working as. So it will give me like a good understanding of that person's potential and their kind of like birth plan, like this the blueprint of their plan. So, and at that time it's like kind of like counseling that person. Okay, well, you are an amazing writer, but because you have this, I don't think, like, if you look at my personality, like my chart, you would see an activist or somebody who is working with children rights, and I did that, of course, or somebody who's a writer and blah blah blah. But then you will, like, somehow, because if the person is a good astrologer, they will find out that, okay, no, there is this thing in your chart which kind of like redirects you towards trauma and transformation. So either you stay in a career where like you're personally going through trauma and transformation, but then because your life kind of like theme is based on that, you will not be happy with just doing the mundane. You want something extraordinary, you want to do something like this. So this is one way, astrologically. Then the second way is energetic. Now there are some clients that are so confused. They are like, they don't know what the problem is, and there are so many problems, and they come with, and these clients are the most, because like it's crazy how lit, like how the number of people that actually come with a known problem, with a known like, okay, I have this problem, I need to work on this, is very less. So most of the people, they will come, okay, my this happened, my family this, my work this, my boyfriend this, my falana this, my dimkana this, and you're like, okay, so what do you want? That person cannot tell you. So these kind of people are so confused and lost that you have to work on their energies. Their energies are stuck, and it's like, I will not go into that because that again opens a Pandora box. But the energetic system or the energetic healing basically is just me working on your physical body, and I will not be like doing any crazy things, but I will just place my hands on specific positions, and those positions are kind of like the portals where you generate certain energy, energetic field. So let's say a person has authority issues or cannot work under authority, like I had those issues, right? So, or they have work problems or they have career problems, so I will be touching in the stomach because that's where most of their problems will be, the gut, right? So a lot of people that you will see who have IBS or bad stomach digestion, they will definitely have authority issues. So things like that. Then there's of course the reproductory organs, and your feet, your brain. So a lot of people who have headaches, they don't have a direction in life. They have the vision, but they don't implement it. Certain things like that. I will deal with it energetically, but of course there has to be, whatever route I take, there will be like another thing that I will kind of like pin along. So energy healing is also I mean, it's phenomenal. But then thirdly, which is also very important, it kind of like is very close to psychology. But the only difference with psychologists and us is that psychologists just focus on your childhood. We go beyond that. We focus on even the time when you were in your mother's womb. So, and also we kind of like dissect the mind We go into the mind and we sort of like find the problem there. So it's more metaphysical as well. When I talk about integrated clinical therapy, integrated clinical hypnotherapy,
Mhm.
so that's when I access the subconscious, and this is where you also do spirit release. This is where you do, you know, it's vows, curses, and everything as well. But everything that is stuck in the mind. So your
Mhm.
subconscious may have any story. I will not judge that story. I will not ask where the story is coming from. It could come from a movie. I don't mind. But if you
Mhm.
say you felt it or you say you saw it, I will believe it and I will deal with it. So clinical integrated clinical hypnotherapy works for cancers, like diseases, sugar, things like that. But it also works on allergies. It works on family issues. So everything is interconnected at the same time, but also it depends where they are at, and then I'll deal with it accordingly.
Fascinating. I think I know that everything is intertwined when it comes to the personalities, whether it's basically the soul, mind, and the body. So I think it's a fascinating insight into a lot of
Yes.
things. From the personality type standpoint, like you're saying that it's astrological lens, then we also have the personality types, like, from the science perspective, or, certain philosophers who have shared, for example, the MBTI and the enneagrams, for example. So do you also
Yes.
analyze from that standpoint, or
I
do you
mean,
believe in?
yes, I do believe in that. Of course, MBTIs are very cool, and I think it's a very good starting point to understand a person. And of course, when you're into personalities and you're doing astrology and this and that, of
Mhm.
course, it's like you have to consider that. But I'm not like so much into the archetypes, because you see, this is also archetypes and symbolic languages that our mind understands and sort of
Mhm.
connects with, and there is obviously a resonance. So if you and I have a resonance, we may have an entanglement. So energetic entanglement, or things like just to kind of like take our thoughts from there.
Mhm.
So if a person believes they are like Hitlers, by Hitler I mean, like, it's a very easy terminology in our world, where we say, okay, I'm Hitler, to mean that I'm very strict and mean and arrogant, and I will do whatever it takes to just kind of like train you and tell you what to do. And the person who believes they will start acting like it. And the person who believes they are sensitive and connected with the inner world, and
Mhm.
sort of like naive or stupid, they will live their lives like that. And you cannot switch the pattern from there. But then when you talk about the nature of the person, that's when things kind of like change completely. Because I may act or pretend to be dumb and stupid, because that's what I've known all my life. You're stupid, you're stupid, you're stupid. I am stupid. I live like that. But then
Mhm.
when it comes to my nature, and my nature will always come in times of threat, in times of a big adversity, a big obstacle, a big challenge, my nature will come out. And
The
that's
natural
why we
response.
talk about like natural response. And that natural response may be very mean or very smart. And people will be like, oh, well, we
Yeah.
don't know her.
You don't sound
So,
stupid to me, by the way, but uh,
but that's what all my life I believed this. I actually
yeah.
believe this. I don't know why. Because I think, see, our nature is always misunderstood by people around us. So
Mhm.
let's say you have a nature of forgiving people, or you are somebody who doesn't hold grudges, or you're somebody who trusts everyone and anyone.
Mhm.
So of course, the woke society will think, okay, he's stupid. He doesn't think for himself. She's always like trusting people. She's too stupid. Or when she talks, she doesn't think.
Mhm.
So okay, she's stupid, and that person will believe that. But then deep down, it's like the nature of the person that is being judged is always going to be perceived by another person. So what I perceive about myself may be completely different than what others perceive me as. But who I am
Absolutely.
truly will
Mhm.
always be sort of history, right? Because we're always changing and growth
Mhm.
is always happening. So we're never there, but we're never here. So it's always like, like we're all so similar, but at the same time, so different and unique. So I think personalities and how I cater to my clients completely depends on the person's auric field. They have an auric field and they kind of
Mhm.
like ooze that energy out. But
Mhm.
no matter whatever person or personality sitting in front of me, I literally, unless it's a person who is like, just poking me everywhere, that can
Mhm.
get uncomfortable.
Mhm.
But even then, I try to understand that person, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe he has a problem with trusting people, and that's completely okay. He has that kind of like, experience. That's fine. It's not that he hates me. So I take my
Bias.
feelings out of it. Yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, maybe it's not about me. Maybe it's about his own personality. So what I was trying to say here is that persons and personalities, no matter whatever kind of like person isn't sitting in front of you, you can always connect and you can always resonate somewhere. So do I do it? No, I don't. Because when I look at the person, even without their astrology, I somehow, I don't know, you call it psychic ability or what, but I somehow like kind of like, I cannot describe it completely, but there is this um understanding about that person. And if they ask me about their personality or questions about it, I will just say the right thing to them at that time that they need to hear. And I don't think much about it. It's not like a superpower, or it's not like something to flex about, but it just comes very naturally to me. And I just feel, like, okay, I understand this person. And I think maybe it's just in my head. I don't care. Maybe it's just something that I tell myself to, not be overwhelmed.
Sure thing. So I,
But it
I will
kind
be
of gets me
asking
through.
I will be asking you afterwards on the chat. So I'm not asking between the podcast what do you think about me. Uh
See, now that you say it, throughout the conversation, I'm not able to read you because,
mhm,
I mean, maybe I'm getting hints here and there, but when you say I will ask you about me, now that you said in future tense, but you have opened that option, that possibility for me to kind of like access you. But if you did not say it, you will be like, okay, whatever he says or whatever he talks about will be revealed to me, not more than that. Whatever I analyze, it's in my head. But energetically, what I can tell about you is only when you tell me to read you.
mhm.
That's how the energy world works. I cannot kind of like invade and like kind of like, oh, there is this. Oh, he has this. Like I cannot,
Sure
until
thing.
unless you tell me, okay, you have the permission. So
And I think that this is a very interesting and fascinating insight. Because I was during the CSS I was reading criminology as well, and there were
oh,
Western philosophers who were talking about, for example, explaining the criminal behavior through biology, or you can say the psychology from that sense. So, what's your opinion on that front? Is it basically a mixture of nature and nurture, or is it basically the inherent nature of the person?
very interesting. I love this topic, and it's been something that has stuck to me from my childhood. There are certain things that you get obsessed with.
Mhm.
And something very funny came to my mind just now. So when I did my astrology, and we were in the class when I was doing my diploma, so there is a certain aspect that I share with Ted Bundy. So I spoke to my teacher, and I was like, I am a psychopath. And she just looks around and turns around and tells me, no, you're not a psychopath. Like Ted Bundy has this exact same thing, but it's like, reverse. So I have like, he has certain thing in Scorpio and I have it in Leo. And he has certain thing in Leo and I have it in Scorpio. So it's like, mirror of the same thing. But the
Mhm.
same aspect, same, exactly. So, so yes,
Sure.
you are 100% right that there is a certain nature element there. But see, it's like very simple. It's
Mhm.
our free will, right? What
Mhm.
we choose.
Yeah.
Choose to act in that moment. I can choose to act completely non. How do I say it? Like I can choose to act however I want, right? And you
Yeah.
can choose to act however you want. But is it in my nature to act a certain way? Maybe and maybe not. Sometimes I can kind of like stretch myself and become completely delineated. And I've
Mhm.
also studied a little bit about criminology and things like that. And time again, you will notice that most of the kids that have gone through abuse, and most of the kids that have suffered a certain sense of alienation from their society, from their caregivers, are always going to be shut off from the world. And like it's nature versus nurture kind of like argument. But when I talk about it in my sort of language, it's always that the heart, the heart space, the heart chakra that we call it, is blocked
Mhm.
because it has not received any energy. So,
Mhm.
and sometimes we also say that, there has been, like, in certain situations where a person commits suicide, we talk about external energies influencing that person. We don't say that that was completely that person's choice, because we don't, I mean, any and every soul that chooses to walk on earth will not walk on earth with this mindset that, okay, one day I will take away my life. They come with the knowledge, with the awareness that, okay, I will be born in this family, I will go through these experiences, and then, like, these problems will come up at me, and I will solve these problems, and I'll go this way. So it might go wrong, I mean, things might not go according to the plan, but I will not
Mhm.
end the life like that.
Yeah.
So in those situations, we talk about external energies. I know it's getting a little bit woo-woo for you, but of course, like, like, there are things that we don't understand and we don't see, but that doesn't mean that they don't exist. But yes, coming back to your point, where a certain personalities, why do they behave like that? It's
Mhm.
also because there is a deep wound that has not been healed. And I think every person has the tendency to be a psychopath. I think we all have that, sort of um, aggression, and violence and aggression is also something that is very below us. But it's part of our design. It's part of our, when we operate from ego, when we operate from our lower emotions like fear and anger and
Mhm.
disappointments and things like that, yes, we are going to act in ways that are not acceptable and that will hurt other human beings. But when we get beyond these emotions, and that's why it's very important to be spiritually aware and kind of teach our kids to sort of like become more understanding, more empathetic, and more like conscious of why we are here on earth. So when you talk about stoicism, and when there are extreme stoicists in the society, they
Mhm.
could be like psychopaths, because they're like, I don't want to feel. So when you
Mhm.
say I don't want to feel, and that's basically 50% of men, maybe 80% of men. So,
Is it a
but
cultural, is it a sorry to interject, is it a cultural
no, no,
lens
please
as well?
do.
Uh,
I mean, see, this is it's not cultural. See, I studied gender studies, and it's
mhm.
it's something that I have noticed. Like, it's not just about man and woman so much, but it's
Mhm.
just that, like, it's easier for men to shut off emotions. It,
Yeah.
it it is like an achievement, right? Because in today's world, if you can be calm and if you can be like unbothered, it's a virtue, of course. Nobody's saying that we all want to cry and be affected by every single thing. If my mom said something to me, why should I cry? Right?
Mhm.
So the act of not reacting is a virtue. But for men, it's easy. They are kind of like, it's like, it's second nature to them to turn on the logic side. But for
Yeah.
females, it's biologically, I guess, it's very difficult to shut off emotions. So I'm not
Mhm.
saying that all emotions turn into something bad. So when you're completely emotional, of course, you can be psychopathic, and when you're not completely emotional, you can be psychopathic too. So there needs to be a balance, which is why
So from
you
the
have to express. Yes.
Mhm. So I think you alluded to the stoicism already, but I think, do you think that, for example, a certain belief systems that we have, for example, if
Yes.
we are aligning with certain political theories, or you can say, general philosophical theories like existentialism, and you can say the postmodernism. So do you think that
Yes.
these philosophies play a role in how we react towards the well-being, or does it affect the well-being?
100%. 100%. See, philosophy is the mother of all sciences, and I wish we lived in a world where philosophy was taught to kids. Like, I like,
Mhm.
it's one thing that has kind of like, I could have been insane. Like I said, it's in my nature. I could have been dead. But but those philosophies and those sort of like understanding and those theories kind of insane, because you're like, okay, this is a thought, this is a thought, then there's this thought, then there's this thought, and all these thoughts together, you can understand the world a little bit. So when you
Mhm.
talk about existentialism, 100%, it is so aligned with spirituality, because we are talking about living for a reason, right? We are saying that life is above and beyond these um, mundane activities. But at the same time, these mundane activities should be honored, should be revered, should be enjoyed. Like, you can't just be like, okay, I have to fix my car, I have to fix my clothes, and your life is all about the materialistic pleasures. But at the
Mhm.
same time, or eating just about anything and everything, like going for junk and unhealthy habits. I'm kind of like saying that you can't completely be there where you're just focusing on these things, but you can't also be like, okay, I'm doing all these things, but I'm not enjoying these things, and
Mhm.
I'm just living like shut off, like I'm closed, but I'm just doing things, but I'm not living in the moment. So when you're living in the moment, you're enjoying, even a healthy food, because it's something that is kind of like awakening your senses and things like that. So I am saying that you must
Mhm.
have a balance where you're enjoying the simplest things, the simplest pleasures of life. And that is
Mhm.
what existentialism is, right? To focus on a purpose, to live for a purpose. And that
Yeah.
purpose could be, I mean, for someone, the good life could be just living on a boat and just fishing all day and just,
Mhm.
that simple lifestyle where I'm just living off the grid and I'm like, malang, things
Mhm.
like that. For that person, it's ideal, and that person should live like that, because that is so simple. You just don't have to focus on anything, no drama, no tension, no trauma. You're just, enjoying life. And for a
Mhm.
certain person, if they want to, like, get on the top of the corporate ladder and they want to be, chairmen and CEOs and presidents and politicians or whatever, they can have those goals, but at the same time those goals and these kind of external pleasures should be not, like, interfering with their own personal wellness goals. So
Mhm.
they should be eating right, they should be sleeping on time. So these things are important, and we all will realize it later, right? Right now it's
Yeah.
all like, okay, this is so cool, I don't want to be so cool.
Makes sense. Makes absolute sense. And I think in
So
Pakistan, like you were earlier saying that, a lot of things in Pakistan, for example, if I would like to become a politician or I would like to become CEO of the company, it wouldn't be a
yeah,
easier route. It would be arduous for most of the people, like you're saying. So in that case, I think uh, maybe certain factors are exogenous, and in that case, you need to be mindful of what you are trying to do. In that case, so
yes,
I think it's a fascinating insight. I think we are probably at the 1 hour spot. So, what's the advice that you would like to give to the audience in the case they would like to find their purpose? And I think it would be a individualistic journey for each of the person. So, how do
100%.
you would like to advise anybody who is trying to find the purpose? And I think, like you're saying, that many wouldn't be able to find themselves. uh, there could be uh, some bit of the support structure or some kind of a philosophy that they need to go towards.
We can complicate it as much as we want, and we can simplify it as much as we want. If we want to complicate it, we can talk about these unattainable desires that are high up there. And if I completely believe that I'm always going to be, outside of it, I will always be outside of it. So, yes, I'm going to say that it's all up to you as a person to decide that, okay, I am above and beyond this. A little bit of superiority complex is needed, not so much that you overstep on others, but a little bit to believe in yourself and be confident of your own desires and goals. And, taking it easy. Sometimes you have to, like, be a part of the group. Sometimes you have to interact. Sometimes you have to, like, feel. And sometimes you have to, like, take a step back and not become part of that toxicity or that group where you feel your own health or your own well-being is getting questioned or affected. So in simpler ways, all in all, in the gist of it, just focus on your own physical body, your mental body, just your priority should be you. And that is the end of it. I'm not saying so that you become a narcissist, but I'm saying because when you look within and you're happy with yourself and you're okay with yourself, you will not have any problem with another person because you wouldn't care. So your own well-being, your own health should be, it is always going to be in your hands. And if you want to look for a purpose, uh, I will sound a little bit controversial here, but there is no purpose to life. You know, we're all just, trying to make it count. So make it count as much as you can.
We are all doomed.
We know we're not doomed. It's just that there is no, like, like, I kept searching for this for such a long time, and every day I'm surprised. Okay, like, maybe my purpose is this, maybe my purpose is that. So your purpose can keep changing every day. It doesn't have
Keep
to be a
changing up.
fixated thing. It doesn't
Yeah,
have to be a fixated thing. And look, focus on yourself. Don't get so busy with life that you don't notice anything. Feel, enjoy, and live.
absolutely. And I think
Yes.
this is a fascinating insight. And would like you thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. And I got to learn a lot. I couldn't ask all of the questions. Maybe we can have another session a
Part
part
two.
two of this.
Already, I feel like it's too much that we covered. I think it's already very long. I don't know how you're going to like put it up.
Yeah, I will be sharing the edited parts with you. So thank you so much once again. I think it's a fascinating insight, and the listeners would be able to get a lot of learning from this. So thank you so much
Yes,
once
and totally the experience was so nice that I got to sit with you because it's like I would not be able to speak up like this if I didn't feel like I can, and you made me feel that, and I think your questions and your curiosity sort of like led me on. So I think I'm very grateful for this opportunity because I got to know a lot as well because sometimes when you talk, that's when you find out. So I'm very happy. Don't mind my sore throat right now, and I'm really looking forward to sitting here next time, inshallah, to talk about something different.